They seriously underestimated me when they decided to mess with the wrong person. I'm about to share the story of how a handful of HOA officials turned my quiet, peaceful life into complete chaos, and how I turned that chaos into a money-making machine. Yes, you heard that right. They went ahead and built a fence blocking the only road to my ranch. But clearly, they hadn't heard the old saying, never anger a Texas rancher. Today, I'm sitting here counting cash at my homemade toll booth while the HOA president scrambles to explain to his superiors why their budget seems to have disappeared. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below if you've ever had a smooth experience with an HOA. I'll bet your stories don't come close to the insanity I'm about to reveal. I'm Ethan Morgan, 38, working remotely in business consulting, but electronics and DIY projects have been my lifelong obsession. 2 years ago, I bought a 30-acre ranch just outside Austin, Texas. Chasing the dream of self-sufficient living, the property wasn't much at first glance. Overgrown fields, a weather-beaten farmhouse, and a dilapidated barn that looked ready to collapse in a strong wind. But I saw opportunity where others only saw problems. The soil was fertile, the water rights solid, and most importantly, it was far enough from the city for peace, yet close enough to grab supplies when needed. I've always loved technology and building things with my own hands. Since middle school, I've been taking apart electronics and reassembling them, often with improvements. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it caused minor, controlled fires that my parents weren't thrilled about. Over the years, I taught myself programming and electronics, skills that became essential for automating my ranch systems. My first big project, an automated irrigation system using soil moisture sensors and weather data to water my vegetable garden efficiently. It conserved water and produced an impressive harvest that very first summer. Then came a solar-powered chicken coop with doors that opened at sunrise and closed at sunset, keeping my flock safe from predators. I even designed a system to text me when a goat was about to give birth. Tracking their movements in real time. My ranch became both a sanctuary and a playground where I grew vegetables, raised chickens and goats, and developed tech solutions for farm life. On weekends, local families stopped by to buy fresh eggs and produce, and I sometimes rented parts of the property for small events or camping trips. The road leading to my ranch had existed for over 50 years. Crossing is small, tract overseen by the Golden Meadows Homeowners Association. The neighborhood was just half a mile from my property, well-kept homes, manicured lawns, matching mailboxes. I wasn't an HOA member, but the previous owner had a recorded easement guaranteeing my right to use the road. The legal document was crystal clear. I had permanent access to my property through this route. No matter who owned or managed the surrounding land. For 2 years, everything ran smoothly. I had friendly relationships with most neighbors, especially Frank and Eleanor Hamilton, an elderly couple next door who regularly bought eggs and vegetables. Frank, a retired engineer, often helped me troubleshoot my bigger projects, and Eleanor swapped her famous blueberry pies for fresh eggs. Life was calm and productive until that fateful Tuesday when a certified letter showed up in my mailbox. I remember the moment vividly. I had just finished installing a new automated feeding system for my goats, hay and grease all over me when I grabbed the mail. Among the usual bills and catalogs was an official-looking envelope that immediately caught my eye. Inside was a notice about an urgent HOA meeting at the Golden Meadows Community Center. What puzzled me was the vague mention of illegal road usage and security enhancement proposals to be discussed and voted on. I wasn't an HOA member, and my legal right to use the road was documented. The letter seemed deliberately confusing, packed with corporate jargon that clouded the real issue rather than clarifying it. After reading the notice several times, I decided it was best to attend the meeting and clear up any misunderstandings. I had no idea, though, that this HOO gathering would mark the start of a 6-month conflict, one that would leave only a single side standing in the end. The day of the meeting dawned under a strange spring thunderstorm. Rain battered my truck. As I drove the familiar road to the Golden Meadows Community Center, the irony wasn't lost on me. Apparently, my right to drive this very road was now a topic for debate. I parked my muddy pickup between two immaculate luxury SUVs, feeling instantly out of place. My work boots left wet marks on the polished floor as I entered, drawing a few disapproving looks from the impeccably dressed residents. On that Thursday evening, around 20 people were already seated in neat rows of folding chairs. I spotted some familiar faces, including Frank Hamilton, who gave me a concerned nod from across the room. At the front of the room stood a tall man in an expensive suit I hadn't seen before. His salt and pepper hair was perfectly styled, and his leather shoes shone under the fluorescent lights. He wore the practiced smile of a politician or car salesman warm on the surface, but never quite reaching his eyes. He introduced himself as Maxwell Bennett, the new HOA president. Recently moved from a successful real estate development career in Dallas, he added proudly. Beside him was Patricia Lawson, the HOA manager, whose perpetual scowl seemed permanently fixed. Clutching a tablet to her chest like it contained state secrets, she looked at me with immediate suspicion. Maxwell started the meeting by going over general community topics, landscaping contracts, the upcoming pool renovation, and the annual summer barbecue before finally arriving at what he referred to as the ranch road situation. His casual transition made it sound like just another item on the agenda rather than something that could completely upend my life. My blood pressure spiked. I noticed Frank shifting uneasily in his seat. As many of you know, Maxwell began, with practiced authority while adjusting his expensive-looking tie. We have plans to develop Golden Meadows estates on the land adjacent to our community. This premium housing project will raise all of our property values by at least 30%. The architectural plans are approved, and we've secured most of the funding to begin construction this fall. He clicked a remote, and sleek renderings of luxury homes, swimming pools, and manicured gardens appeared on the wall. Phase 1 will feature 12 executive homes starting at $1,200,000, with a private clubhouse and tennis courts exclusively for Golden Meadows residents. He continued as murmurs of approval spread through the audience. However, we face one obstacle, he added. The unsightly ranch that generates unwanted traffic through our beautiful community. My blood began to boil. He was talking about my property. The word ranch sounded more like a toxic dump than a working farm. Maxwell went on, showing renderings of a massive security gate and fencing system designed to control undesirable traffic, a thinly veiled reference to me and my visitors. The security gate will feature stone columns, professional landscaping, and a state-of-the-art access system that will enhance both security and property values. He explained, clicking through more images. Construction begins tomorrow and should be completed within 3 days. I couldn't remain silent any longer. My chair scraped against the floor as I stood, drawing every eye in the room. "Excuse me," I said, striving to keep my voice steady despite the anger boiling inside me. "I'm Ethan Morgan, the owner of that unsightly ranch you just mentioned. I have a legal easement that guarantees me access to my property via that road. You can't just block a formally established right-of-way without any prior notice or discussion." The room went quiet. Maxwell's face shifted from surprise to scorn in an instant. He clearly hadn't anticipated me being here or speaking up. He quickly regained his composure, though, forcing a condescending smile that made my blood boil. "Mr. Morgan, while you may have had some informal understanding before, The HOA has complete authority over community roads and security measures, he said with an air of certainty, as if the issue had already been decided. Besides, your farm is an eyesore. It's depressing property values across our neighborhood. The board has already given unanimous approval for the security gate project. He motioned toward a group of nodding men and women seated in the front row, presumably board members. Of course, we're not unreasonable. You'll be able to purchase an access card for an annual fee of $300. That's a generous offer considering the added security and increased property values we're providing. I felt my face heat up with anger. This isn't some informal agreement. It's a recorded easement filed with the county. It's a legal right. You can't just vote it away. I scanned the room, making eye contact with several residents. And my farm has been here for decades, long before most of your houses existed. The previous owner never had an issue with the community, and neither did I until now. Maxwell's smile remained intact, but his eyes hardened. Times change, Mr. Morgan. The board has made its decision. Construction begins tomorrow. I suggest you apply for your access card promptly to avoid any inconvenience. With that, he smoothly moved on to the next agenda item, as though the matter were already closed. After the meeting, I lingered in the parking lot, still fuming. The rain had stopped, but water dripped from the trees above, mirroring my dark mood. George Miller, a longtime resident I recognized from past community events, approached cautiously. He was in his 60s, with gentle eyes and a permanent line of concern etched on his forehead. Glancing around nervously to make sure no one was listening, he leaned in and shared troubling news. Bennett promised investors he'd raise property values by upgrading the area and removing undesirable elements. That means your ranch. He wants your land for the full development. This gate is just the first step to pressure you into selling. George's voice dropped to a whisper. He's done this before in other communities. First come access restrictions, then mysterious code violations, then water issues. He'll make life miserable until you give up and sell. I thanked George, a sinking feeling growing in my chest. When I requested documentation about my easement, Maxwell brushed me off. They're under review and temporarily unavailable. Legal is assessing the validity of old easements against our new security requirements, he said dismissively. I'm sure it'll all be resolved eventually. The message was clear. He was buying time while pushing ahead with his plans. Driving home that night, my truck's headlights cutting through the darkness, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to be steamrolled by people with more money and connections than I had. That evening, I called my friend Olivia Nguyen, a local real estate attorney I'd known since college. Despite the late hour, she answered on the third ring. I paced my kitchen, explaining the situation, occasionally peering out the window as if expecting bulldozers to appear at any moment. Olivia listened carefully, asking occasional clarifying questions. When I finished, she let out a low whistle. Ethan, these HOA types can be ruthless, but they cannot simply ignore a recorded easement. That's not how property law works. The sound of keyboard clicks in the background suggested she was already looking things up. First thing tomorrow, go to the county registry office and get a certified copy of your easement. If it's properly recorded, they cannot legally block your access, but fighting this could take months and cost thousands in legal fees. Her words weren't comforting, but at least they gave me a direction. What about tomorrow? They're starting construction in the morning. Can we get an emergency injunction or something? I asked, anxiety creeping into my voice. Olivia sighed. Emergency injunctions take time too, Ethan. At least a few days, maybe weeks, depending on the court calendar. Document everything. Take pictures. Document every interaction. Keep copies of all correspondence. If they completely block your access, contact the sheriff. That could legally count as detaining you on your own property. We spoke for another 30 minutes, mapping out a strategy. By the time we hung up, it was well past midnight. Before heading to bed, I grabbed a flashlight and walked down my driveway toward the main road. As I suspected, survey markers and stakes lined the roadside. Bright orange flags fluttered in the wind, and spray-painted lines traced where the fence and gate would be installed. It was obvious they had been plotting this for quite a while. Sleep didn't come easily. I assumed I had a few days to sort out the legal complications, but at dawn, the sound of heavy machinery shattered any illusion of time. The unmistakable beep-beep of construction vehicles reversing yanked me out of bed. I threw on clothes and bolted outside, pulling on my boots as I ran down the driveway. From the front porch, I watched in shock as a crew raised an 8-foot metal fence and installed an electronic gate across my access road. The fence stretched in both directions, completely severing my connection to the main road. A massive yellow excavator dug post holes while workers poured concrete for the gate's foundation. I hurried over, demanding to speak to whoever was in charge. The workers shrugged, refusing to halt the work. "We're just following orders, sir," said one, hard hat low over his eyes. "You'll need to speak with the HOA management if you have concerns." Within an hour, Maxwell arrived, Patricia trailing behind him. Both looked impeccably dressed despite the early hour and chaotic construction site. Maxwell smugly waved. What he claimed was a building permit. Careful not to let me inspect it closely. "This is HOA property, Mr. Morgan," he declared, his satisfaction barely hidden. "You'll need to register for an access card, $3,000 a year, to use our private road. Patricia can process your application today, though approval usually takes 5 to 7 business days." That same fake smile curled across his face. "Until then, I've authorized a temporary access card for you. We're not monsters, after all." I was furious, fists clenching at my sides. "This is illegal. I have an easement, you know it. You can't block my only access to my property." Maxwell's smile never wavered, though his eyes grew icy. "Mr. Morgan, I understand your frustration, but I'd strongly advise against interfering with this legal construction project. We have every required permit, and I'd hate to involve the police if you become disruptive." He rested a hand on Patricia's shoulder. "Miss Lawson, please provide Mr. Morgan with his temporary access card. I have other appointments." With that, he turned and strode back to his luxury SUV, leaving Patricia to manage the situation. Patricia reluctantly handed me a plastic card, as though she were surrendering a fortune of her own. "This expires in 7 days, she said tersely. "The annual fee must be paid in full before we can issue a permanent card. There are no monthly payment options." Her tone suggested she was expecting me to push back, and perhaps even hoping I would. With no better alternative, I accepted the card and made my way to my truck. The gate was already active, forcing me to swipe the card just to leave my own property. The mix of humiliation and anger was almost unbearable. I drove straight to the county registry office, a 30-minute trip downtown to the courthouse. The registrar, an older woman with glasses dangling from a chain around her neck, helped me locate and obtain a certified copy of my easement document. She raised her eyebrows as she skimmed it. "This is a pretty straightforward perpetual access easement," she noted. "It's been in place since 1972. Odd that anyone would challenge it." I clutched the document like a lifeline, feeling a small sense of vindication, though uncertainty about my next move lingered. From there, I headed directly to Olivia's office. Her law firm occupied half a floor of a modest office building on the outskirts of downtown. Her assistant led me straight in, and I found Olivia surrounded by open law books, her computer displaying multiple tabs of legal research. After reviewing the documents, she confirmed my easement was valid and enforceable. They have no legal right to block your access, she said firmly, removing her glasses. This easement is properly recorded and runs with the land. It transfers with ownership and isn't affected by who owns either property now. She leaned forward, her expression serious. Getting an emergency injunction could take weeks, and they know it. This is a deliberate stalling tactic. They want to pressure you before the legal system can respond. Olivia explained that we could pursue an emergency injunction, but the court backlog meant it could take at least 3 weeks before a hearing. In the meantime, she advised, document everything, take photos, record conversations if legal, and keep a detailed journal. If they completely block your access, even temporarily, call the sheriff immediately and cite your easement rights. I left Olivia's office with a plan, but felt like I was already several moves behind in a game I hadn't realized I was playing. When I returned to my property that afternoon, the fence and gate were complete. The once open access road was now blocked by a heavy metal gate with keycard entry, surrounded by cameras and intercoms. The fence stretched as far as I could see in both directions, a stark reminder of Maxwell's determination to control my movements. Maxwell stood there with a smug smile, handing me a temporary 7-day access card. After that, he said, you'll either pay the fee or find another way home. Then he leaned in and added, I know you've been digging through the legal documents. Go ahead and file for an injunction. By the time it goes through, our development deal will be secure and we'll have other ways to make your life difficult. As I watched his self-satisfied expression, an idea sparked. If they wanted to turn my road into a toll gate, why couldn't I do the same? I didn't reveal my thoughts. I silently took the card and drove through the gate onto my property. Once inside, I parked my truck and walked along the property line, paying close attention to where the new fence intersected my land. Something felt off. The fence curved slightly at one point, veering from where I remembered the property line. Retrieved the survey from when I bought the ranch and compared it carefully to the landmarks and measurements. After an hour of analysis, I suspected the HOA's new gate might partially encroach on my property. Over the next several days, I dove deep into Texas land laws and easement rights. Sleep became scarce as I spent hours at my kitchen table surrounded by legal documents, surveys, and printouts of property statutes. I discovered something crucial. My easement guaranteed reasonable access, but more importantly, the HOS gate actually extended slightly onto my land. A surveying mistake meant about 3 feet of the electronic gate mechanism and 1 fence post were technically mine. This small detail could change everything. I consulted Olivia, who confirmed I had the right to control structures on my property, including that encroaching section of the gate. If their gate is partially on your land, they've built an unauthorized structure, she explained, a mix of surprise and satisfaction in her voice. That gives you rights they can't easily ignore. She advised obtaining an official survey to confirm my findings before taking any action. If you're correct, this might be the advantage we need, but we have to move cautiously. We need absolute certainty before making any assertions. I reached out to my friend Ryan Cooper, a local contractor who had helped me renovate my barn the year before. Ryan was practical and no nonsense, with a strong distrust of people in suits telling ordinary folks what they could do with their own property. As he often said, I laid out the boundary maps and my property survey for him. After carefully reviewing them and walking the property line with me, he confirmed my observations. No question about it, he said, chewing on a toothpick. They built part of that gate on your land. Probably assumed you wouldn't notice or wouldn't know how to respond if you did. Ryan helped me devise a plan to set up my own toll booth right beside the HOA gate, squarely on the section of land that legally belonged to me. With my electronics knowledge and DIY skills, I could design and program an automated system for the booth. We'll need to act fast, Ryan warned. Once they catch wind of this, they'll try to stop us. Sometimes it's better to ask forgiveness than permission. We spent the entire weekend strategizing and gathering supplies, knowing we had to move while the HOA office remained closed. Trips to hardware stores, electronics suppliers, and lumber yards consumed our days. Collecting everything necessary for construction. Maxwell thinks he's clever, I told Ryan as we finalized our plans. This weekend he'll learn never to underestimate a rancher with DIY skills and a score to settle. Saturday evening we started building. Ryan brought 2 of his most trusted workers, and I called in a favor from a friend who specialized in electrical work. Under bright floodlights, the hum of power tools occasionally drew curious glances from passing cars. Luckily, Maxwell and Patricia didn't show up, perhaps assuming their victory was already sealed. Ryan and I worked through the night into Sunday morning, erecting a professional-looking toll booth beside the HOA gate, entirely on my property. We constructed a sturdy, compact structure with a covered operator area, a lifting arm barrier, and clear signage. I handled the electronics myself, installing cameras, a payment terminal, and an automated barrier programmed to lift only after payment. We had signs professionally printed stating, "Parking private toll road, $20 per crossing, monthly pass, $100. Caution, do not enter without payment." The local print shop rushed the order as a favor. They had their own HOA Horror Stories and were eager to help Dot by early Sunday. The toll booth was fully functional, complete with official-looking receipts and a mobile payment system, all legal since it sat on my property. We even installed solar panels and a battery backup to prevent it from being disabled by cutting power. As Golden Meadows residents returned from weekend trips, they were met with the unexpected toll booth, stunned and confused. Cars began backing up as drivers tried to understand the situation. I stood at the booth in a button-up shirt and professional cap, politely explaining to each visitor, "This road crosses my property at this point," I told a bewildered family in a minivan. "Since the HOA charges for crossing their property, I'm doing the same for the portion on my land. It's $20 per crossing or $100 for a monthly pass. Cash, card, or mobile payments accepted." Some residents were irritated, some amused, but most paid because they needed to get home. A few tried to argue or threatened to call the police, but I simply smiled and pointed to the property survey posted on the booth. "Feel free to call them," I said. "I've already checked with local law enforcement. This is my property and I'm within my rights." By mid-afternoon, news of the toll booth had spread, and residents were taking photos and videos. It was only a matter of time before Maxwell discovered it. Around 4 p.m., Patricia spotted the booth while returning from grocery shopping. Her shocked expression as she rolled down her window was priceless. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, visibly fuming. "This is illegal. I'm calling Maxwell right now." She refused to pay and parked along the road, furiously dialing. Her phone. 30 minutes later, Maxwell arrived, his face crimson with anger. He stormed to the booth, his designer shoes kicking up dust. "What the hell do you think you're doing? This is illegal harassment. You can't block a public road," he shouted, drawing the attention of curious neighbors. I remained calm, which seemed to infuriate him further. "This isn't a public road, Mr. Bennett. You established that yourself when you put up your gate. According to the property survey, this portion of the road sits on my land." I was simply exercising the same rights Maxwell had insisted the HOA held, controlling access to my own property. His voice escalated as he threatened to call the police, almost shouting, I responded calmly, inviting him to do just that, and explained I was standing firmly on my property with certified survey documents to prove it. I've already consulted an attorney, I added. Everything I'm doing here is completely legal. If you're questioning the property line, you're welcome to hire your own surveyor. Maxwell pulled out his phone, dramatically calling the police while pacing, explaining to the dispatcher that there was a road blockage and a legal toll booth. Within 20 minutes, Officer Ramirez arrived, a middle-aged, no-nonsense cop I had met before during a trespassing complaint. He listened to both sides, carefully examined my documents, including the survey and easement papers. After a thorough review, he turned to Maxwell. Sir, this looks like a civil matter, not a criminal one. Mr. Morgan is on his own property according to these surveys. If you disagree with the property line, that's something to resolve in civil court. Maxwell sputtered, insisting I must be violating some law, any law. Officer Ramirez remained composed but firm. Unless you have documentation proving this is your property, there's nothing here for me to enforce. I suggest you speak with your attorney. As Ramirez left, Maxwell stood there, red-faced and powerless. I knew, though, this was only the beginning. War had been declared, and Maxwell Bennett was not someone who would back down easily. The following Monday, he called an emergency HOA meeting to plot strategies for dismantling my toll booth. According to what I later heard from Frank, Maxwell painted me as a dangerous troublemaker, threatening property values and community safety. The HOA hired William Davis, a high-priced attorney specializing in real estate disputes. Within days, I received a threatening letter on official letterhead demanding I shut down operations immediately, citing alleged violations of local ordinances, easement misunderstandings, and public nuisance laws. I forwarded the letter to Olivia, who dismissed most claims as empty legal intimidation. I didn't flinch. My toll booth continued operating, generating thousands of dollars in just the first few days. Golden Meadows residents grew frustrated, not with me, but with Maxwell for escalating the conflict rather than resolving it. Many questioned why they should pay twice, once to me and once to the HOA, just to reach their home's dot in the following days. The HOA tried multiple sabotage attempts. First, they cut power near my booth, but my solar panels and battery backup kept it fully functional. Then, building inspectors were sent to search for violations, but Ryan had ensured every aspect of construction exceeded county codes. They even tried to classify my toll as a business requiring permits, but my attorney successfully argued it was merely a property access fee, identical to what the HOA charged. Word of the dispute spread like wildfire throughout the community. Neighbors talked about it at local stores, school pickup lines, and church gatherings. Nancy Fletcher, a longtime resident of Golden Meadows, started questioning Maxwell's handling at HOA meetings. Why are we paying legal fees when we could just remove the gate and end this nonsense? She demanded during one particularly heated session. This toll booth situation is making us a laughingstock across the county. My friends from other neighborhoods ask if they need to bring cash just to visit me. Other residents voiced similar frustrations as they continued paying to enter their own neighborhood. Meanwhile, Zoe Sullivan, a reporter from the Austin Chronicle, reached out to cover what she called the toll war. I invited her to the ranch, showed her the documents, and explained the situation from my perspective. I didn't start this fight, I told her. I just want the access I'm legally entitled to. But if they're going to charge me for crossing their land, why shouldn't I be allowed to do the same? Her article outlining the dispute and Maxwell's heavy-handed approach ran the following. Sunday and quickly went viral, gaining traction from communities nationwide who had their own HOA horror stories. Soon, local TV stations picked up the story, and my small toll booth became something of a local curiosity, with people stopping by just to see it and snap selfies. The media attention and growing frustration among residents should have pressured Maxwell into finding a solution. Instead, he escalated things. My security cameras caught him and two unidentified men vandalizing the toll booth at 2 a.m. one Tuesday. The footage clearly showed them damaging the payment terminal, spray painting over the cameras, and trying to dismantle the barrier arm. One of the men appeared to be William Davis, the HOA attorney, though his face was partially hidden by a hoodie. The third man remained unknown. I called the police immediately and filed charges for trespassing and property damage, providing the video as evidence. The footage showed Maxwell's face perfectly as he sprayed over the cameras, unaware that I had backup cameras hidden in less obvious spots, specifically to prevent this type of sabotage. Despite this clear evidence, Maxwell denied any involvement when interviewed by police, claiming there was no proof and insinuating that I had staged the attack to gain sympathy. He didn't realize that my security system had automatically uploaded the footage to cloud storage even as the equipment was being damaged. Copies had already been sent to Olivia, the police, and several trusted friends as additional backup. With Ryan's help, we rebuilt the toll booth within a day, making it stronger than ever. We reinforced it with steel supports and added extra security features, including motion sensors and alarms. I also put up a new sign, special fee for Maxwell Bennett, $1,000 per crossing, and publicly shared the vandalism footage on social media. It spread rapidly through neighborhood groups and forums, creating massive embarrassment for Maxwell and the HOA board. The HOA quickly called another emergency meeting. Many residents voiced anger at Maxwell for his unprofessional behavior and the legal risk he had imposed on the association. "You've now put us all at risk of a lawsuit," one resident shouted. According to Frank's report, "What were you thinking? Vandalizing private property on camera?" Meanwhile, I continued, digging into Maxwell's background and motives. Through public records and contacts in the real estate industry, I discovered that he had a close relationship with Platinum Ridge Developments, the company behind the planned Golden Meadows estates. He wasn't just overseeing the deal as HOA president, he was personally receiving substantial commissions to resolve the ranch situation and pave the way for development. This represented a clear conflict of interest that he had never disclosed to HOA members. I also uncovered evidence suggesting he had intentionally concealed my easement rights from the HOA board, framing the gate project as a mere security measure rather than a strategy to pressure me into selling. Olivia uncovered documents proving that Maxwell had deliberately falsified the original building permit for the fence. The permit application indicated a gate location different from where it was actually installed, carefully omitting any mention of existing easements that could have alerted the county permit office. At the same time, I obtained a leaked email from an HOA resident in which Maxwell admitted his scheme to seize my easement rights to boost property values. Once Morgan realizes he can't easily access his property, he'll have no choice but to sell to us at our price, Maxwell had written. The temporary inconvenience to residents will be worth it when property values rise 30% with the new development. I finally had everything I needed to trap Maxwell, but before delivering the final strike, I wanted to give him one last chance to dig his own hole even deeper. I sent him a formal invitation to a peace negotiation at Olivia's law office. To my surprise, he accepted, likely thinking he could intimidate me in a more formal environment. The meeting was scheduled for Wednesday afternoon. I arrived early, reviewing strategy with Olivia and ensuring our recording equipment was ready. Axel showed up 15 minutes late, a calculated move to assert dominance, accompanied by William Davis. Both were dressed in expensive suits that likely cost more than my entire monthly farm income. During the meeting, I laid out a simple, clear proposal. I would remove the toll booth and drop all charges if the HOA dismantled their gate and guaranteed my permanent easement rights in writing. The solution immediately resolves the conflict, I explained. Everyone returns to the arrangement that had worked perfectly fine for years. No toll booth, no gate, no legal expenses. Maxwell and Davis exchanged a glance. Maxwell then leaned forward, wearing a condescending smile. Mr. Morgan, I don't think you fully understand your position. The HOO has far greater resources than you do. We can drag this out in court for years if necessary. You'll be bankrupted by legal fees long before we feel any real impact. Overconfident as always, Maxwell rejected the offer and even revealed more about his development plans, including how he had manipulated the HOA board by withholding critical information. Most of those idiots don't even read the documentation I provide, he bragged. They just vote the way I tell them. This development will happen with or without your cooperation. The only question is whether you'll profit by selling now or be financially crushed fighting it. What Maxwell didn't realize was that our conversation was being legally recorded, with Olivia serving as a witness. Texas law allows recording with consent from one party, and we had carefully posted a notice in the meeting room stating that recording might occur. Maxwell and Davis had underestimated one crucial detail in their arrogance. The following day, I unleashed everything: the vandalism video, the leaked emails, proof of Maxwell's conflict of interest, and the recording of our recent meeting. I uploaded it all to social media, sent copies to every HOA member, and handed the full package to Zoe Sullivan at the Chronicle. The response was instant and overwhelming. Zoe published a comprehensive expose detailing Maxwell's financial ties to the development company and his attempts to withhold information from HOA members. Major news outlets quickly picked up the story, placing both Maxwell and Platinum Ridge developments under intense scrutiny. The HOO board convened an emergency meeting where several members demanded Maxwell's immediate removal. The session was chaotic, with residents shouting and pressing for answers. Maxwell tried to defend himself, claiming the recordings were doctored and the evidence fabricated, but few bought his story. Patricia sat quietly beside him, her expression hinting that she was already plotting her exit. Within a week, Maxwell was dismissed by the HOA, facing a civil lawsuit from me and possible criminal charges for vandalism. William Davis quietly stepped down as HOA counsel, likely realizing the recordings implicated him in potential criminal activity. The new HOA board, with Nancy Fletcher as interim president, acted swiftly to remedy the situation. They unanimously voted to remove the gate and formally recognize my permanent easement rights in a legally binding agreement. Additionally, they agreed to cover the damage to my toll booth and pay my legal expenses as part of a settlement. Following the scandal, Platinum Ridge Developments pulled out of the Golden Meadows Estates project, unwilling to be associated with the negative publicity. The land intended for development was eventually acquired by a conservation trust, preserving it as a natural area and maintaining the community's semi-rural character. Maxwell made a final, desperate attempt to sue me for defamation, but the court dismissed his claim when he couldn't prove any of the evidence I shared was false. The criminal charges for vandalism were ultimately resolved with a plea deal, which included community service and restitution payments. I chose to use the $15,000 collected from the toll booth to establish a land rights defense fund, dedicated to helping others facing similar HOA intimidation. It struck me as ironic that Maxwell's effort to squeeze money from me ended up creating a resource that could help others resist similar schemes. I decided to host a big BBQ at my ranch, inviting all the Golden Meadows residents, everyone except Maxwell and the local press. The event turned into a celebration of community unity, with many neighbors expressing relief that the Toll conflict had finally ended. During the gathering, I shared my vision to transform the ranch into a community agricultural education center, fostering positive connections with those around me. This land was meant to be shared, I told everyone. Instead of breeding conflict, I want it to be a place where we can come together and learn from one another. Frank and Eleanor Hamilton were quick to step forward. Frank offered to teach kids the basics of electronics, showing them how to build simple circuits and solar-powered gadgets, while Eleanor volunteered to lead gardening workshops. Soon, other neighbors joined, contributing their own skills and knowledge. What began as a tense, adversarial relationship between my ranch and the community was slowly evolving into a collaborative effort. A year later, the ranch had become a bustling community hub, hosting gardening classes, farmers markets, DIY workshops on agricultural automation, and weekend events. Local schools brought students on field trips, and the university's agricultural extension office partnered with us on research projects. As for Maxwell, he was ultimately forced to sell his home and move away after being shunned by the community. I placed a small sign at the former toll booth site: never pick a fight with a rancher who knows how to build things and has too much free time. The old gate area was transformed into a welcoming entrance, complete with wildflowers and a seating area. The HOA underwent major reforms, introducing transparency measures and limiting the president's authority. George Miller joined the board and championed reasonable enforcement of community rules. My DIY skills found a new purpose as I helped neighbors set up solar panels and automated irrigation systems. I also published an online guide to farm automation, which became popular with small-scale farmers across the country. The old toll booth was dismantled, but its parts were given new life. The barrier arm was turned into part of a playground structure. The solar panels were used for educational exhibits, and the security cameras were repurposed to monitor wildlife for science programs. Zoe Sullivan's article covering our dispute earned her a journalism award and helped launch her career in community reporting. This whole experience reinforced a simple truth: communities are stronger than individuals, driven by greed. Property values in Golden Meadows actually rose, despite the luxury development falling through. Living next to a vibrant educational farm proved far more attractive than yet another cookie-cutter housing project. If you ever find yourself facing a Maxwell Bennett, remember to document everything. Understand your rights, cultivate community support, and embrace creative solutions. Standing firm, exposing injustice, and using innovation to level the playing field can help you overcome bureaucratic intimidation. Now, as neighbors drop by for fresh eggs or to join workshops, it's hard to imagine this property was once the center of such conflict. The fence that was meant to divide has been replaced with open gates that invite. Sometimes the little guy with determination and creativity can triumph over those who mistake wealth for righteousness and authority for true power.